happy to have you on the podcast today. How's it going?
Yeah, it's been nice. Had just had the weekend. That was fun.
Yeah. It's always good to sort of do it on a Monday, after the weekend. So it's sort of, you still have conversations happening even though the weekend's over. Did you get up to much on the weekend?
So yeah, instead of sort of having a weekend off, I did worked on some of my side project, delivered around a few magazines, and then Sunday when it was terrible rainy weather, I just stayed in and watched some movies, relaxed.
Yeah. Oh, it's good you got some balance, but the life of an entrepreneur, right? It's just if you can sneak in some work, it's very tempting to, isn't it? So, um,
Yeah,
so, so let's jump in. So we'll jump into the first R of this 4Q podcast, which is around reflect. So for those who don't know Jamie Apps, amazing. I'm so happy to have his story on the 4Q podcast today because I just know it's going to be a good one. So for those who don't know Jamie is a storyteller who's got a passion for the entertainment industry. So he's worked in Sydney for Sydney-based newspapers for the past 6 years, and he's just created his own podcast, The Commentary Booth, and a self-published magazine. Forgive me if I say this incorrectly, Pario magazine in the past
correct.
year.
That's it.
Yeah,
Yep.
perfect. And he's lived with cystic fibrosis his whole life, but he's never let that get in the way of achieving his dreams or going after them. So Jamie, what an intro. Can you tell me a little bit more about yourself?
So yeah, like I initially went to uni for an economics degree, finished that and decided that I did not really want to do that as a career because of all the sort of the math stuff was fine, but not enjoyable. Like it wasn't an exciting career. It was pretty run of the mill. So then I decided to go back and do a master's in journalism and communications. Completed that, then worked as like a volunteer contributor for a newspaper for about 3 or 4 months.
Mhm.
And then at that time, the editor there decided to sort of step back a little bit and gave me control of the music section. I worked on the music section for about 6 months to a year. And then she left the role as the arts editor completely. So
Mhm.
then I stepped up and took over the entire arts section. And from there, I've just been with that newspaper for, like we said, the last 6 years.
Yep.
Did about a year working for our company has two separate publications. So I stepped across and started doing the editing of the second publication as well. But after a year, realized that two of those plus my own projects was a little bit too full on. So I've stepped back and just gone back to doing the arts and then my own projects as well.
Yeah. So very full plate. It sounds like you're a pretty ambitious kind of person, which is pretty much who I work with all the time. Is this sort of type A people where we're like, yeah, we can do anything. We can like have a massive load, and then that kind of leads to a little bit of burnout and all of that. So it sounds like it's been an interesting kind of pivot, because economics is very different to the creative industries.
Yep.
Uh, One's definitely more left brain, the other one's definitely more right brain. Can I ask, initially when you chose economics over something creative, was that just like a logical decision, or how did you make that shift in choosing something that fits more with you?
So at high school, I had an incredible economics teacher. So that sort of helped with that. I really enjoyed doing that at school. And I always sort of wrote and did quite well in English, but never pursued it heavily. So once I found economics and had that really awesome teacher that sort of inspired me to follow it more, I followed it through to uni. And
Mhm.
then at uni, we did a subject called the history of economics. And that was a lot more written essay reflection and feature type pieces. And that's where I was like, hang on, this is what I enjoy. It's the writing and learning people's stories rather than sitting down and doing the maths side of things. So then obviously when I completed, I was 2.5, 3 years into the 4-year course. I was like, I'm not going to drop out now. I'm going to complete this and then I'll do the masters afterwards and come back and follow the creative side.
Yeah, definitely. And writing and the stories is something obviously that I really connect with, because this podcast is really about the guest podcasts are definitely about sharing people's stories, and I guess just making links that other people don't make, that those creative things. And I'm sure you can relate to that, is just seeing the world from a different perspective and sharing that perspective with people who maybe think that way too. So I know we've reflected a little bit on you. Can you mention about your magazine as well, just quickly before we move on to the next part?
So obviously working in the arts industry, I've sort of built up that background of talking to people, hearing their stories and sharing those stories. And with the newspaper being focused on Sydney, it sort of limits who we can speak to, and it has to be built around an event or something coming up in that location. So with the magazine, I've wanted to sort of spread out and speak to all different people. So it's not necessarily purely just arts focused. Like I've spoken to some athletes. I've spoken to a girl that runs her own hair salon. A friend of mine has just started a swim coaching business. So I'm speaking to all different people from all different fields and just talking about their journey and how their passions have led to this career and what they've created from those passions.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm just trying to sort of show people stories and the passion that everyone has a passion for something, and how can you pursue that passion to make something a career that's not just a boring job that you don't enjoy going to. It's something that you love to do, and then that way it never feels like work.
100%. I couldn't agree with you more, and I think it's such a powerful thing to present through stories. So let's go to redefine. So that's the second question, or the second R of our 4Q podcast. So redefine is really about pivotal moments in your life that redefined a perspective or meaning in the way that you see life. So what's been like a bit of a hard moment or something that's changed things for you?
Well, obviously, as we mentioned, living with cystic fibrosis my entire life has been a struggle. It's a chronic lung condition that is uncurable, so I'm never going to not have the disease. So that's been a struggle. And then a couple of years ago, I had some a bad run of health issues. So I had the flu twice. They were talking about putting me in intensive care for the second case of that.
Yeah.
I've also I had a period of about 6 months where I had 4 collapsed lungs that were just spontaneous out of nowhere. The first one I didn't even realize I had until they did my monthly x-ray, and I'm like, oh, why you're missing half your lung there? It's collapsed. So
Yeah.
that was surprising. And then one of those was so bad that I went to the hospital. I woke up, I went to go to the bathroom, which is an ensuite toilet. Could barely walk to the toilet. Felt like I'd just run a marathon afterwards. I was that out of breath. So we went up to the hospital. They did the x-ray, and even the x-ray technician looked at me and just basically said, I've never seen somebody with a collapsed lung that bad and still be conscious.
Wow.
So that was pretty terrifying. And then that one led to a chest drain for 6 weeks before they took that out, and I was recovered.
Wow. Yeah. So some pretty big health things. When did you, just because I'm not super familiar with everything around cystic fibrosis, and it's not, obviously that's not what we're here for, but if you could also give us like a bit of a rundown of, what was that like, sort of finding that out as a kid, and what did that mean, and what's like a normal balance or normal life look for you in terms of that, like going through these things?
So I was diagnosed at 6 weeks old. So I never sort of had that moment where all of a sudden my life changed. It was kind of, this is
Mhm.
just always the way it's been. But in terms of what that means in the day-to-day life, it's every morning I have to get up and have nebulized medications so that it's sort of like Ventolin Atrovent. So it's essentially like really bad asthma in the morning. So I have
Yeah.
that expands my lungs. And then there's tablets. So with cystic fibrosis, it affects both your lungs and your digestion. So my
Okay.
body doesn't absorb the nutrients properly. So because of that, I have to have tablets with every meal so that my body absorbs it. A whole bunch of antibiotics, anti-inflammatories, vitamins and minerals. So in terms of day to day, it's a bit of an impact in terms of I can't just wake up and get off to work or do my
Mhm.
daily activities. It's up, nebs, tablets, shower. Now we can go and do everything else.
Yeah.
And then meals have to have the tablets every meal. And then in the evening, it's sort of rinse and repeat. It's all the nebs and tablets again before I go to bed. And in terms of like physical activity, I'm limited in terms of lung capacity. I couldn't go and run around and do things like normal children did. It was okay, this is as far as I can go. I need to stop and catch my breath type thing.
Yeah. Yeah. And I guess it's an interesting question, and I don't know if you can answer it for me. So just, bear with me, but just so I can get my understanding. I guess going through that, I feel like there would have to be a lot of resilience and strength coming through that. Do you find that, because you might not see it or feel it because you don't know, like you haven't, like you said, like you got diagnosed at 6 weeks old, so there hasn't been any change. Oh, um, yeah, so sorry, just to recap that. So just like we were saying, I know you may not know any better, but if there's resilience and strength you've had through going through that experience that others might not have at such a young age, I think I'm wondering if you find that that's something that's made you so like such a go-getter and such wanting to achieve things and sort of not letting things in your way, maybe compared to other people who haven't had, difficult medical experiences like that.
Yeah, I think it probably has in terms of like, yeah, nothing is ever going to be as bad as dealing with some of those things. So any small hurdle gets in my way, I'm like, oh well, we got to work out a way to get around it. You can't change things, so we just persevere and deal with it in the best way possible. So I'm pretty regimented in terms of my scheduling as well, which I think is probably like because of my medical condition. Like I said, I have to wake up and do these regimented
Yeah.
things in the morning. So there goes my dog.
All good.
So yeah, in terms of like my work schedule, I have this pretty hectic uh, calendar going. So there's every little thing is blocked out in terms of here's an hour for this, 2 hours for this thing. So I think that's all built upon having cystic fibrosis.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. And I guess it just, again, that's another skill that, I know people in their 30s and 40s who can't follow a schedule. So, having learned that skill at such a young age, I think that definitely helps in terms of the working world or, following your passions and balancing so many projects as you do. So,
Yep.
I guess let's go to the redesign then around. So, um, I guess I always talk about people. This third R is around, having this hard sort of difficult situation in your life. How did you redesign the way that you do things in everyday life, or what tools did you use to sort of redesign your life for the better?
So yeah, I think I just sort of managed to go, okay, this is something we have to deal with. Let's um, manage all of the elements in the best way we can in terms of, yeah, I'm regimented with my scheduling. Obviously, I took on a little bit too much with the multiple newspapers. So I decided, I need to step back and focus on my projects, the main newspaper, and then all my health stuff. So I realized I couldn't do it all at once. So I think that's a big thing. You need to be able to look at things and realize, this is now too much. You need to be able to step back and look at those logically rather than I just want to do everything. So I think that was the biggest one.
Yeah. And it's interesting that you say look at it logically, because I often find that I go the opposite way in terms of so recently, for people who have been following me last year, I just had a lot going on, and I really had to use my heart to make a decision, like my intuition about like what feels right for me. Like if I visualize a life that I want in the future, what fits better for me, and just kind of trusting my gut in that sense. So it's interesting that you've been able to get there using a logical way as well. I like that sort of balance. But I'm wondering, was there any sort of gut or intuition, like I do want to follow my passion in my projects?
Yeah, that was definitely in there. Like I would much prefer to be working on, if I could make the magazine and the podcast the sole focus, that would be the dream. That's where I want to get to. So the newspaper is there at the moment to supplement that. And then once I can build up that base with the magazine, like obviously we're only the one issue in. So just continuing and learning different bits and pieces as I go. Through work, I've learned, okay, this is how to improve these things, this is how to improve these other elements. So I'm slowly getting there in that way. So I think the passion and the logic combined is the best way to go.
Yeah, well, and I think if I could put it out there, and I'd love to get your thoughts on this. So in my business, obviously, I do a lot of coaching with people, but I come from a therapeutic background, so I do a lot of therapy with people too, both at Savasana Collective, my business, and I also do work for another employer where I do therapy as well. And one of the big things that we do a lot in one-on-one sessions is just reframing things in a way that pain is part of life. I think sometimes in Western culture, there's this idea that, you just work hard and you try hard and things will just work out. And so when pain happens, it feels so much worse because we have this idolized idea of what life's meant to be like. But we find what the research shows us is, like, paradoxically, is that when people accept that pain is going to be part of life, like there's going to be painful moments in life, there's going to be maybe painful seasons of life, it actually hurts less. They're actually more resilient and able to get through it faster because they've already accepted that that's going to be part of the journey, as opposed to someone who just thinks that life is just going to be grand and perfect without sort of pre-planning for that. And I guess I'm wondering, given that you've had health concerns and health issues from such a young age, and perhaps life hasn't been as perfect or idealistic as it can be, I kind of wonder if that makes you a better business person and a better sort of entrepreneur in that way, because you know that things aren't going to be perfect. And like you say already, I've heard you say it, if there's an obstacle, how can we get through it, as opposed to too hard basket, I shouldn't have tried this, like all the negative thoughts sort of that pop up. What do you think of that kind of mindset?
Yeah, I think that's definitely in there. In terms of my business, I think what the health issues have taught me is, there will be those hard moments. So I sort of plan with the idea that they will come up. So I never leave anything to the absolute last minute. I try to be ahead of everything so that if something does come up and it delays production of the magazine or delays the podcast, I've got those safeguards built in place already. So like, I've literally just put out the first issue of the magazine, but I've already completed interviews and got pages laid out for the second issue already, which isn't due for at least another month. So it's every second month. So I'm trying to sort of have everything in place ahead of time so that if I suddenly do have another collapsed lung or do get sick again, I can take that time to go and heal, sort that issue out, and then come back and focus on the business healthy and ready to go.
Yeah, well, and I kind of wonder, I guess we're the final R, so the final question of our 4Q podcast is around the realign. So it's sort of, going through this journey, what do you do to kind of stay on track, to keep calm and clear and content? And I guess before I ask you about this area, it sounds like, just from what you were saying, it's like you schedule healing and time off into your into the way you run things so that things don't become overwhelming if that happens.
Yeah, definitely. I whenever I'm working on things, it's in my office in here specifically. And then I don't do anything else in this room. So I step away if I need to get away from work. I shut the door and I'm out. Like I'm not doing anything for work. That was a big thing I found when I was doing the second newspaper as well. It was creeping into that time away. So I try to work a regimented day, like 9 to 5.
Yeah.
And after 5, that's it. I switch off. So with the second newspaper as well as my own projects, they were sort of blending together, and that was causing problems. So I think that's a big one. If you can have a dedicated workspace and dedicated work times, that's a really big help. And then when I do have issues where I'm sort of becoming a bit stressed and burdened, I lean on family and friends and if you can, like, you just take a day and focus on, I'm going to watch a movie. I'm just going to do something else to clear my head and get back to a spot where I can focus and work properly.
Yeah, 100%. And I love what you're saying about, having boundaries, having a designated space, I think is so important in terms of, just setting boundaries around when I'm in this space, I work, and then when I'm done, I step away. Like, I think it's just so crucial, because if you work in your living room or you work in your kitchen, like, I recognize that not everyone can have an office room, but even if it's just somewhere away that's not always in your face, I think that's important. I love that you set really strict boundaries around time, because I find that in myself as well, is that when you're working on a passion project, time can just get away from you. And so it's very easy to, work over it. So I think having those boundaries is important. But something that I think that you do so well, that I think not just entrepreneurs, like every single person should really try and incorporate that into their sort of planning or scheduling, is time off and time for rest. So I often tell people the two things that fade away when people are stressed or overwork, first is fun and also rest, because it's like those things aren't valued, again, in a Western culture. It's like, I don't have time for that, or that's not important to my productivity or whatever. And actually, it's like maintenance for your productivity. If you want to be productive, you need to have rest and you need to have fun, because otherwise, you find yourself just in the grind, and you start to lose your passion. Like, you start to go, oh, this is a burden. Like, so I love that you've scheduled that into your thing so that it's already there. Like, you don't have to think about it. If you have extra time to work on stuff, great. But if you don't, like, you've got that time. And I think that's really interesting and really important for anyone, not just someone with, medical issues or health concerns. I'm curious, like, as your team grows and as you start to hire people, do you think that's something you'll encourage in your work team as well?
Oh, definitely. Like, I don't want to be pushing people to the breaking point. Like, it doesn't seem like it would create the best product in the end. If everybody's happy, they're going to want to come to work. They're going to want to produce the best thing possible. So that's definitely at a core of my business.
Yeah. Again, I think that's just Yeah, so vital and so crucial. And I love that you're going to encourage that in your team as well, because I think you're exactly right. I always think a happy worker is a hard worker. And if you can make people feel happy in their workplace and not feel like they're pushed to the edge, you're actually going to get better results from them. So yeah, so I think you've done that so well, and you're leading by example, which is, I think, the best thing a boss or a leader or a visionary of any kind can do. So, Jamie, it's been so amazing to talk to you. I think I've got a lot of sort of good lessons, and yeah, good ideas from you. I'm curious, was there any sort of final thoughts that you had or actionable steps that you'd recommend for anyone if they're sort of going through something or overcoming something, or trying to find themselves in life? Any kind of tips or
Just if you're struggling with something, don't try and sort it all out yourself. You need to lean on those people around you. They're there to support you. Family, friends, whoever it is, just open up to people. It helps a lot. And then, yeah, in terms of work, if you're trying to create something, dedicate those times. Don't let it creep into every moment of your life. And then, yeah, just follow your passion. If you follow your passion, it's not work anymore, and it's something that you'll be happy to do and get done.
Awesome. I think that's amazing advice. So, of course, before you leave us, which I'm so sad this conversation's coming to an end already, but before you leave us, where can people find you if they want to connect?
So my personal accounts are all at Jamie Apps Media. The magazine is at Pario Magazine, and the website is pariomagazine.com.au.
Awesome. Well, that'll be in the show notes for anyone who's wanting to follow Jamie and the magazine, which I'm sure we're all sort of anticipating what's going to be in there, especially for anyone who loves listening to our stories. I'm sure they'll love reading yours as well. So, Jamie, it was such a pleasure to have you, and I can't wait to see how the magazine and everything plays out. So, thanks for coming on, and yeah, would love to stay in touch.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for having me.
No worries. All right. Bye.